the desire to be popular may be one of the unworthy ambitions of a person's heart. Yet there is nothing in the world so delightful as having it happen to you. And if having almost everybody like you, and show it by being nice and friendly to you on all occasions, makes you happy your own self, how much more happy you are when somebody you love gets a slice of it all along with you. My father is getting to be one of the beloved men of this town, like Judge Luttrell and the Colonel. It has been going on gradually for some time, but I was afraid to notice it for fear I was mistaken. Such is the result of the sincere prayers of a daughter, and I certainly was sincere in wanting this reform. And better than even his sitting and smoking and joking in the judge's office and walking down the street in a friendly manner with Mr. Cadwell is the notice that Mr. Douglas Bird has been taking of him lately. The idol has been to see him twice in the evening, and both times I have heard my father's jolly laugh boom out in a way the nurse says will have to stop, for it made Mother ask to see him and be ill because she couldn't. And just day before yesterday, Father came up the street with the great inventor, and they both came in and sat with Roxanne and me on the cottage porch to smoke their cigars. Roxanne was just sweet and good and easy with Father, like she always is. I don't believe that girl was ever conscious of her feet and hands and blushes in all her life. I forget mine when I am with her. Well, anyway, Father was delighted with her and showed it plainly. And if he liked her, he was positively funny when he met Lovelace Peyton. The snake doctor came around the house, as usual, galloping on the stick horse. And in one hand he had one of his best bottles, full of something awful to look at, and that smelled worse, even through the cork. "Mister," he said, looking at Father gravely and courteously in the face, "you got cholera bad, and might die tonight if you don't take medicine quick. It's in this bottle. Shake it well." And while the idol made a grab for him, he put that bottle right in Father's hand and backed off out of reach. Roxanne was distressed at Father's having taken that awful smell into his hands, and Mr. Douglas tried to make him give it back to Lovelace Peyton, but Father wrapped it in 2 handkerchiefs and put it, smell and all, into his pocket. "Thank you, Dr. Bird," he said, just as gravely as he talks to the great surgeons and doctors that come to see Mother. "Shall I report my condition to you tomorrow?" "That medicine will work fine," answered Lovelace Peyton. "But if it kills you, can I cut you open and see how you work inside? When Douglas dies, I'm going to cut him into little pieces. He's done promised." "Oh, Lovey," was all Roxanne could say, while Father and the idol roared. I never saw my father's face so lovely as it was when he looked down on that little raggedy boy as we left him swinging on the front gate. His heart is softening away from wealth to his fellow man, I know, and as if it had not made me happy enough to have Father sitting and smoking with such a great character as Mr. Douglas Bird, what should happen but for us to meet Tony at our front gate, coming to see Father especially? They made me go in and wait on the front steps while they talked, because they didn't want me to hear. And they both laughed, so that Father tried to get out his handkerchief and succeeded in dropping the awful bottle Lovelace had given him, while Tony leaned against the fence and shook with chuckles at Lovey's giving him such an awful smell. Oh, if they were to elect my father an honorary member of the Raccoon Patrol, like the Colonel and the idol, I could not stand the happiness. Tony's friendship for him gives me one of the deepest joys that ever came to me. Tony's high sense of honor cannot help but impress Father. This little town of Birdsville that nestles down in the hollow of the old Harpeth Hills on the old pioneer road that they called the Road to Providence, when the first settlers traveled it from Virginia to Tennessee, is the most wonderful place in the world, I think. and I wish Father could have been born and reared here, for then he wouldn't have strayed into a career of making money. Nobody in Birdsville ever did, and Mr. Douglas Bird will be the first one. And besides having the soul of honor and loving kindness in it, Birdsville looks like it might be one of the outposts of heaven, where tired souls can come to rest before going up the shining ladder. All the houses are old-fashioned, with wide doors for welcoming, and with vines running over the chimneys and up to the eaves, while blooms and buds tremble over the walls and burst from the gardens into the street. Yes, I think Birdsville might be called the smile place on the old earth's round face. But to return to Father and Tony at the front gate, only I didn't. Father went on down the street, and Tony came in to sit on the step and talk to me. I wouldn't be so frivolous and groany as to have a boy come sit on my front step, talking to me like a suitor, as Belle thinks it is smart to have. But Tony is different. He's my friend, and I would almost as soon talk to him as Roxanne. Well, I must say, girlkie, that it was mighty considerate of you to be born about the full moon time of the 1st of May, said Tony, with one of those funny flares of his eyes. Suppose you had opened your peepers along in December. We would have had to have an apple roasting to celebrate you, and I, for one, prefer the haylark. Your parent is one of the fine old boys, and me for him. Oh, Tony, I'm so glad you like Father, and it was fine of him to have the hayride for me. Do you suppose they will all go? When I said all, I really meant Belle. I don't know why, but somehow I hoped this hayride would shake up Belle's heart into being soft towards me. There are just 11 of us in junior class in the Bird Academy, Tony and Pink and Sam and the 2 Logan boys, while Roxanne and Mamie Sue and Belle and the 2 Willises, with me, make up the girls. 11 is a sacred number, and I don't like for Belle and me to break the link by not being friends. Tony is such a wise boy that he sometimes knows what a girl is thinking about when she doesn't tell him. Most of the time, he just grins and leads us all on, and we do tell him everything, especially Mamie Sue. If we don't warn her beforehand and make her wear a horsehair ring not to forget when he asks her questions, it makes Belle mad for him to do to Mamie Sue that way, and she calls it prying. But I think it is just kindness. How can you sympathize with your friends' affairs if you don't make them tell you all? And sympathy applied to life is like the gasoline in a motor car, I think. Well, I should say they are all going, answered Tony enthusiastically. Even Belle, the beauty, can't hardly wait for the getaway. She is putting buttermilk on her freckles so that the moon won't see 'em. Miss Prissy is over at Roxanne's now, trying to baste Roxy together for the frolic. I think Roxanne always looks lovelier than anybody, I said quickly, for I don't think I could bear to have even Tony, when I know what a great love he has for her, criticize Roxanne's shabbiness. They don't any of 'em know what a heroine she is, and about the great cause. Course she looks good, 'cause she's the pretty child, but I always feel like carrying a needle and thread, and a card of pins, when Roxy is along. And let me tell you, the bug doctor is about to burst out into the cold world from his aprons. I know old Doug makes enough to rag the family, but Roxy is just behindhand, getting rabbit skins to wrap the buntings in. Lots of girls are poky about doing around. If Tony Luttrell had known how cruel that sounded, it would have broken his heart. But I couldn't tell him what a heroine Roxanne is, and I just had to shudder in my soul to see her so misunderstood. Roxanne, whose every day is just one big patch on life. It's lovely of Miss Priscilla to go with us, I said, to change the subject. It would be a dry hayride if Miss Bubbles wasn't sitting in the very midst of the crowd, and the wagon, with the colonel prancing along beside on Old White. Your father is going to ride out with the colonel, but that's the surprise. Being with your gingham gang so much, I'm about to get the talks." And Tony put his hand over his mouth and moved away from me as if I had the scarlet fever. I laughed at Tony, and from sheer happiness at thinking that my father was going with us in the fine company of the colonel and Miss Priscilla, I wondered what we would do if we had to have somebody go to places with us who thought they had to chaperone us. Miss Priscilla is just one of us, and would go if we had to ask somebody like Belle's mother, for instance, who is always talking about chaperones, to go also. As I have remarked before, Birdsville is a very different place from most of the world, and I thank God that He led me to it and made me lie down in its green pastures beside its still waters. I found that in the Bible the other night, and it fits me and Birdsville. Good night, Louise. Of course, when I grow up, I shall have many things happen to me, like graduating from Birdsville Academy, marrying, and being presidents of clubs, and going to balls and theaters in the city, if I have to. But there will never be a night like this one of my 16th birthday, April 22nd. Miss Priscilla Talbot was the first slice out of the happiness birthday cake when we met down at her house to get into the wagon. I can never have things here at my home like that, because of the precious sick thing upstairs that cannot be disturbed, but who is in the core of my heart, anyway, even if she doesn't know it. But of all astonishing things, this is what Miss Priscilla did, as we were all lined up, for Father and the Colonel to help us into the wagon, on the great mound of hay, to the front of which 4 horses were hitched. And now, to start off the birthday, we must each give Phyllis a kiss, as we would do if we were blowing out the candles on the cake that is packed in the basket, and each one whisper a wish to her as they give her a kiss. "I will be first, and the Colonel next," she said, and she bent down and kissed me and whispered, "A happy 16th year." I never had been kissed. Even Father never did it to me, because I have been more like a son than a daughter, and he hasn't thought of it. To get a whole wagon load of them at one time, and unaccustomed to them, was enough to paralyze any girl, and I stood dumb and took it. Them, I mean. The blow out the candle with a kiss wish is one of the first family birthday customs in Birdsville, and I felt that it was right to subscribe to it. I didn't mind when I saw the boys were going to refuse firmly to do it, and just shake hands instead. "Bully for you, Bubble, and a pound or 2 to cover your elbows," Tony exploded, while he nearly pumped my arm out of the socket. Everybody laughed because I am getting thin with so much growing. The Colonel's kiss was a ceremonial, like you have in church or at graduation day, and his wish took 5 minutes to say. But the tall Willis choked up my throat with a lump by whispering, "A hope for my mother, which can never be, I know." Next, the idol kissed my hand with grace like is in a storybook, and which made my whole arm ache like a poker. Father hugged me with all the energy he hadn't been using on me all my life. It hurt me happily. Roxanne came last, and she saved hers until the Colonel had packed us down together in a nest of hay at Miss Priscilla's feet, like 2 kittens in a basket, with Loveless Peyton squirming around as a third. "You never encouraged me to kiss you before, Phyllis," she whispered, with her arm around my neck. "But I am going to whenever I want to after this. And here's a wish, that we may never get separated further than kissing distance, now that we have found each other." Only Loveless Peyton kept me from crying out loud like a baby from happiness. He burrowed between Roxanne and me in a search for some peppermint he smelt in the hay, and stuck one knee right into my mouth to stop the sob, which was a laugh when I removed the knee for it to get out. My first hug around Roxanne's waist was mighty awkward, but I know she understood. After that, the picnic unfolded.